Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel, and in today's video we are joined by Blaze17, and today we're going to be going through a bit of a 2021 AFL Grand Final preview as well as giving our tips and predictions for the Grand Final. Had to get Blaze on as he is the Dogs fan. You must be feeling nervous, Blaze. How are you going?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Game's getting pretty close. I think we're only one sleep away now, so very close to the game and getting very nervous.
Yeah, very nervous time. So today we're going to change up the format a little bit. Instead of me just doing my boring tips and predictions just by myself, we've got Blaze on and we're going to be going through a bit of a preview, how the teams form, how the form has been for the teams over the past few weeks, and yeah, just basically doing a little bit of a season recap, I guess you could say, on how they got to this stage. So we'll get straight into it. So these two teams have been arguably the best two teams in the league, and coming into finals you definitely wouldn't expect the Dogs to make it where they are. What are your takes on that, Blaze?
Yeah,
Dogs coming into finals, I think, 3 losses in a row, and they've somehow made it all the way here.
And 3 very poor losses, and they're very well bounced back, very good. But I think definitely we have the 2 best teams. When they're both going at their best, we've got the best 2 teams in the grand final. And yeah, the Dogs once again are the underdogs, and they'll be the underdogs as well in this one. And I think that's kind of how they like it, the Bulldogs. So yeah, a bit of an interesting one there with the form-wise for the Dogs, but they've definitely got some form back now, in my opinion.
Yeah, so if we look back the first time these two teams played each other in the season, we were thinking this could be a bit of a grand final preview. I think both teams, did they both go 9-0? And then I think the Dogs lost against Richmond, I think, to lose their winning streak.
The Dogs went 6-0 and then they lost to Richmond.
Yeah, so if we go back to the first time these two teams played in the season, everyone was saying this could be a bit of a grand final preview, and then the D's came out and absolutely thumped them. And then the next time they played, what actually happened? I don't remember.
The Dogs won by 20.
The Dogs won, didn't they?
But yeah, it was very interesting because the first time they played, it was perfect conditions at Marble. Bulldogs were sloppy, D's were just all class, but then the second time round it was a bit more rainy and slippery and tough conditions, and the Bulldogs kind of suit that in somewhat of a facet.
It's a bit of a tricky one to tip because both times, like let's say for example, the first time they played, the D's just dominated the Dogs, and then the next time they played, the Dogs outlasted the D's. So we haven't seen like a real close matchup from these two teams, and especially, I remember earlier or around the middle of the season when the D's were going through that horrible patch of form when they drew against the Hawks. They had some really bad losses, and it's sort of the same as the Dogs. They've had a bit of a comeback, and they've really turned their form around, and they've somehow, well, most people were predicting them to make it into the granny, but the way that they did it, like they had to turn around the boat a massive way, and the same with the Dogs. So they've both had massive turnarounds this season. They've both been in similar ships, and yeah, it's just crazy to see these two teams play, because if we look back around the start of the year when the Dogs and the D's were just dominating every single game they went into, we were thinking, alright, Dogs, D's, granny, 100%. But then it started to get a bit iffy. The Dogs dropped out the top 4, the D's started to lose form, and everything was going pear-shaped for both teams, and we just didn't know where the grand final would end up. And here we are, back basically with the same mindset as we had at the start of the season, just with, both teams being the most dominant in the league, and they've made it here.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, but I feel like the way Melbourne did it, they were always a bit more classy in some of their performances. In some of the Dogs' performances where they won, they were a bit sloppy. They just didn't really get their best footy going, but coming into the finals, they really turned it around. But I think with how classy the D's have been all year, they've always stepped up when people started to doubt them, and the way they just dismantled the Lions and the Cats, I think they have to go in pretty heavy favourites in my opinion. So
the D's won by, was it 83? And then the Dogs won by a whopping 71, I think.
Yeah.
71.
I
think there was a stat during the week that's the biggest margin of prelim finals like combined ever.
Yeah, we didn't really expect it. Like, we thought the Cats and Port were sharp, but I think for me the more surprising one was definitely the Bulldogs-Port game. I think most people, it was kind of 50-50 people tipping Port, but the Dogs just came out and absolutely dismantled them. Like, the way they took Lear off the footy was absolute class, because that Dogs forward line on list isn't the best, but the way they work together makes it it's a very interesting forward line, but they're strong when they get going.
So we've also got the ins and outs for the teams just came out yesterday. So the Melbourne Melbourne don't have any big ins or outs. They've basically just got James Jordan out as a medi-sub. And huge for the Dogs in Alex Keith. Keith has been an absolute bullet for you all year. Pretty underrated he is as well. And Cody Waitman, what a glob he's had this season. Probably, I would say, in the top 10 for the Dogs this year. And then we've got the Bulldogs out as well. Ryan Gardner has been dropped. Anthony Scott as the medical sub. And Leatham Vandermeer also dropped from the side.
I think Gardner out is very unlucky. Ryan Gardner in the finals, when Keith was out, was very good. I think for me personally, as a Dogs fan, I would probably prefer Cordy to be dropped if I'm going to be completely honest. Even though Gardner's a bit younger, he's a bit more versatile, because all really Cordy can do is just mark, but he's not the best by foot or with the ball. But Gardner, on the other hand, is a very good kick, and he's very versatile.
Keith has had a really good season, and if we go back to the 2016 Granny, when the Dogs came from 7th place to make the grand final to then win the premiership, it's a bit of a similar boat. So they've come from 5th and they've made it through to the Granny, and back in 2016 they were challenging a really, really strong Swan side, and now they're facing a Melbourne side which we can say they haven't experienced basically anything in finals, only a few games. But the way that they've just gone through all these final games this year so far
Such a mature
is
list.
just incredible. So it's probably, I would say, this Melbourne side in 2021 that's in the Granny is probably better than the Swan side in 2016 that you won the Granny against. So it's going to be harder for the Dogs to get this one done, because I think, I don't know, the D's play a better brand of footy at Optus, so I do have to say that too.
Optus, yeah, and with their obviously playing last week at Optus would really help them. I don't think last time the Dogs played at Optus was back against the Eagles, and Melbourne, a few late games will help them, especially that one.
Yeah, especially when you guys played the Eagles, that's when they were really, really dropping down form, and basically that's around the time when North was even beating West Coast at their home deck. So it was a good win from the Dogs, and I don't know how this one's going to shape out, this Granny. I feel like it's just going to be one of those games where you go in thinking it's going to be an absolute thriller, but I feel like one side's just going to get a hold of another, and it could just be another boring grand final.
Well, I think the key part for me now, a lot of people are saying, oh, it's going to be one in the middle, the Superstars are going to win it, but for me, I think it's going to have to be like somewhat like in the 2016 grand final, like a Liam Picken and a Tom Boyd for either one of the sides. Like, there's going to be a matchmaker who not many people suspect and just comes out and absolutely dominates, and I reckon that could even be the match winner. Like a player like a Charlie Spargo, or like a Cody Waitman for the Bulldogs, just comes out and kicks 4 or 5 goals and just dominates. That could be a massive factor.
So obviously we've seen over the past few weeks for the Cats, Gary Rowan, we can see that he can't perform well in finals. What do you think about, like, let's say for example, Cody Waitman coming into this game? Do you think he'll still start as much as he did in the home and away season? Is this his first final he's been played because of his concussion, or is it?
No, he played half the game against Brisbane against S, infamous 4 goals. But it's a tough one. I've got a feeling, I reckon one of either him or Cozzy Pickett will dominate, and I reckon the other one will have a quiet game.
Yeah, I feel like
it's just who is it?
Yeah, I feel like one player that just looks like is going to be outstanding in the Granny is just going to lack the form. Kind of like Gary Rowan, because how good he was, so good in the home and away season,
he never really
and coming into finals couldn't get a touch at all. And I feel like it's going to be something similar with a player that we will expect is going to do really well, but I just don't feel like they're going to have it, and I just feel like they're going to drop off one of the most important games of the season. But both sides, let's say this, both sides are switched on to the max. They've both been the best sides of the league by far, I reckon.
Yep.
Especially if they're in their top form, they could beat absolutely anyone. And so we'll move on to now our predictions. Blaze, who do you think is going to take it home?
Well, I've been back and forth all week, and my tips video I said Dogs by Dogs by 7 or 8, and it's really hard to tip against your own club.
It is, but especially in a grand final too. It's hard enough to tip a grand final if you're a neutral fan, but if you're a supporter of one of the teams,
it makes it tough. But I've got a feeling my boys will just sneak home. and that is due to the fact of Bailey Smith dominating. So I'm going to have to go Dogs by 7 points.
The D's are probably, I'm going to say, strong favourites.
Yeah.
But you never know what the Dogs can pull out, especially after those, after the previous few weeks that they've had. So I'm going to tip the D's just because it is at Optus Stadium. And I'm going to say this, I will be surprised if the Dogs win, and I wouldn't see it coming. But I'm going to tip the D's to win it by a healthy 24-point margin, I reckon.
Well, I know everyone's saying it's going to be a thriller, but it's got a potential to be a thriller, but I've also got a feeling, I think it just comes down to which team comes out and just plays better. Like, if the D's come out and play slow, Bulldogs will run over the top like they did in round 20, but if it's the other way around, back in round 11, the D's will come out and run on top if the Bulldogs are just sloppy and not composed.
Alright, so I reckon we will leave it there. We've had a decent chat about both teams, and we've both given our grand final predictions. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Go check out Blazer's channel. Link will be at the top of the description. Make sure to go drop a sub to him, and we'll see you guys in the next video.